I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth this morning, and I had a couple hours to think about it because I had to hop into work, and I'll have to hop into work again soon. So I might as well just say what I'm thinking. I loaded up the post-game save because you can chapter select and go back in time, and get access to the open world again and complete quests you missed and redo stuff. Like you can go back and spend more time with the characters in different chapters where you get different people based on your conversations you have with them and whatnot. There's actually a really extensive log of all the things you've done in the game and what you're missing, which is really nice if you want to go back and be a completionist. I'm not, 'cause I'm a crazy person, but I figured I'd show off a little bit of the combat in the Colosseum to just unlock some fights that I'm not high enough level for, so I'm probably going to end up dying, but that's okay. But myself and Tifa will hop in here and probably get wrecked. I've had a great time with this game, for the most part. It does a pretty poor job of respecting your time because there are so many things in this game that could be shorter than they are, and they are just longer than they need to be for the sake of extending time more than anything else. So the combat system is pretty much the same as Remake. I didn't like the combat system in Remake very much, but I enjoyed it a lot more here because of a couple of very key additions. For one, you can actually choose your party members by and large. There's a couple of points in the game where you don't get to choose who you want to play as and what teams you want to have, but it's not like it was in Remake where you have pretty much the same party. You can't choose who you're fighting with or as for most of it because the story tells you who you're with. For a large chunk of this, you can have the entire group with you, and you can pick the two people you want to have, and there's actual tangible reasons to bring different people with you. Like, I'm stalling for time here at the moment while I'm talking, but you get these things called synergy skills, which I'm going to just use here to build up some bar. Like, I can have Tifa charge up my blades for a massive hit, which is very useful. There's also a new thing in the bottom right corner. In addition to the time bars that fill up as you hit things, there's those little pips just underneath it, and they fill up when you use one of these abilities. Like if I braver this guy in front of me, I now have 2 bars, and with 2 bars I can now use unique synergy abilities. Like myself and Tifa can do a spinning attack that gives us both unlimited MP for a while, or I can raise my limit break levels by throwing Tifa at someone. So let's throw her at this person. So in addition to looking incredibly cool, those abilities have super useful effects, such as improving your limit breaks. So now, like, my limit break is higher level, but hers is still just regular somersault. So the synergy abilities mean it actually matters what teammates you bring with you for fights, because everyone has different synergy abilities with different effects. Some people will give you 3 sections of your ATB bar. Some people will give you unlimited magic. Some people will give you buffs and debuffs, or they'll give you better limit breaks. So it's good to bring a mixture of people for different effects and impacts, as opposed to just bringing your 2 favorite people the whole time because you want to hang out with them. Like I mostly ran with Tifa and Aerith because their synergy abilities work really well together to be really useful for boss fights in general. Let's be smart. So that's one of the major changes, is synergy abilities, which make combat more fun, because you also get the ability to do things like some enemies will get pressured by getting using synergy attacks on them to deal with them. And what was the other thing? There's a much better leveling up system for your weapons and your character. Like you get SP when you level up, and the SP can be used to upgrade your character with basically a sphere grid. It's basically just a sphere grid. It's a lot better than the first game where you were busy leveling up a weapon itself and then putting abilities onto the weapon that would only be useful when you use that weapon itself, and it just felt like you were locked into one weapon for the entire game because of the abilities it had, as opposed to like the actual material you could equip or the aesthetics or damage it could do. So it feels like a much more customizable system. which of course is great for just being more fun to play with. So, downsides. I still play the entire game on easy because the combat system, while being better, can still feel a little bit unfair at times. Like, there's often times where enemies will just combo you for ages. There's a lot of enemies that have abilities like that one where they just trap you for a while so you can't do anything. Or they'll literally remove your character from combat. Like, if you got hit by that first attack there, you're getting hit for ages. And your teammates, while they are smart enough to use their abilities, if you put materia on them, like, it can still feel a little bit frustrating when you're just wailing away on someone for ages, and it feels like you're not really getting much done. Like, for this guy, I should be using ice magic on him, but this is the other thing I wanted to mention that was improvement. I'm remembering now. You get abilities from that sphere grid that let you have access to all the elements at one time. Like, I can do something called Snow Flurry, hit this guy with ice magic, despite the fact that I don't actually have ice materia equipped. It was incredibly frustrating, like in the first game against the Hell House, where you'd be expected to use certain elements on a fight, and if you didn't have the materia equipped for it, well, tough luck. Go load a checkpoint and change out your equipment to have the stuff you need for that element. But the fact that those abilities don't even use MP, and every character can learn them, means you can cover all of the elements with any character. Which is a lot less frustrating when you get something like, oh, you have to use ice on this guy or nothing happens to him, because you've always got access to ice.
With me. Got you. Let me out. Bingo. There, bring it. Heads up.
Hey, you got a lot more XP in post game, it seems.
But not my best.
Yeah, sorry, Keith, I was trying to talk over it all the time. Yeah, the combat's pretty improved from the first game, but it's still not the highlight. Like, FF16's combat still feels better, just because you kind of... It feels like you're more in control of the fight, as opposed to having to balance 3 different team members and having to have their ability to do things, you know, on cooldowns and stuff like that. Like, the abilities you have on cooldown in 16 are the ones you've picked to bring with you, and they have their own individual cooldowns, as opposed to having a cooldown before you can do anything, if that makes sense. So yeah, the combat is good. Let's have a quick look at the world map. So small spoilers here if you want to not see the world map and all the things you can do in it. But there are a lot of things to do on this map. There are so many quests. My save file at the moment is on 85 hours and 40 minutes. That's with only having spent like 10 minutes in the post game, you know, looking at the logs and stuff like that and all the different things. And yeah, I'd say I've enjoyed maybe 80 hours of that. There's only a couple of bits where I was looking at it and go like, why are we doing this? Like, there's a section where you're throwing boxes at switches and stuff that is just painful to play because it's just so slow and clunky. And there's a couple of bits that were extended from the original game in ways that were a little bit disappointing. Like, the Shinra Manor in the first game is a really creepy old house with a nice Resident Evil vibe to it. And then in this one, it's like, oh, you go into the basement instead. Never mind exploring the spooky mansion, you know, that would have been nice. Yeah, I greatly enjoyed it. The same caveat as the review for the first game. If you haven't played Final Fantasy VII, Remake and Rebirth are an okay way to experience these stories, but these games are designed for people who've played the original Final Fantasy VII and have played Crisis Core, because there are very explicit Crisis Core references throughout, including playing as characters from Crisis Core. So I would harshly recommend playing Crisis Core first, which, if I remember rightly, I advised you to play last year in one of my reviews, and even play the original game through to completion, because you'll get much more out of this game. The last chapter is absolutely phenomenal. I'm very excited for where they're taking the story for the third and final game, which, if they've got any sense, will be called Final Fantasy VII Reunion. But yeah, like, I can only really recommend it if you've played the previous games. I can't recommend it if you haven't, because you're getting into the middle chunk of a story. Like you're not going to understand what's happening. It's like watching Empire Strikes Back as your first Star Wars. It's not the best. But it's also not the worst thing in the world either. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it. So let me know. And I've waffled on for way too long, so let's cut this short.